So I'm being hit by some kind of fume here. I'm just going to make this brief. There's people sleeping here and what have you. Here I'm in Santa Cruz on New Year's Eve. It's sad that the inhabitants of the earth decided on the direction that they decided, and that things are the way they are. Didn't leave me any choice but to, make the divine verdict that I must seal people out of heaven after my flesh dies. I know there's a lot of friendly people, a lot of nice seeming people. I often speak about the difference between being nice and being righteous, the difference between being nice and being pure. So it's also very sad that people don't understand the significance of God being a warrior and what that means, and what that means in regards to God's expectations. God expects people to be righteous and just. And it's sad that there's a lot of people who are poor, who need help, and people turn their backs on them. It's sad that there's a lot of problems in the world, a lot of wars that I don't approve of. Every single war that's going on right now, I don't approve of. I don't approve of how the governing class is managing it. It's heartbreaking. I don't like to see people suffer. I don't like to see people lost. I don't like to see the failure of the government to pass the programs that are needed. Cost-effective programs, farming programs, tiny home programs. Why should people be poor when there's people who have so much money? Why should people be on the streets? Why should people feel neglected by society? God doesn't want this for humanity. God doesn't want the suffering. God doesn't want the misery. God doesn't want the neglect. God wants you to love your brethren. The governing class needs to realize that in order for them to have a better life, they need to help the poor. They need to try to be just and fair and good. They need to love people with their actions, with their obedience to God, with their caring spirit. They need to find their inner self. They need to find themselves, their better self, their just self. And they need to act quickly. Every day, people die in the streets all over this country, all over the world. 9 million people starve to death every year. 3 million of them are children. 10,000 children starve to death every day. There's no reason that the wealthy can't redistribute 10% of their wealth over 30 years and put an emphasis on helping the poor, put an emphasis on housing the homeless, an emphasis on building rehabs and food programs, because people are homeless for different reasons. Some people are just down on their luck. Some people are drug addicts. Some people were abused. Some people are mentally ill. They all need help, and they need help immediately. And it's sad that people won't rally to accomplish this task. It breaks my heart. It breaks my heart so much. And every day I see the failure of so many people. There's 22.5 million millionaires and billionaires in America. Why won't they come together? Donald Trump gave them $2 trillion in tax breaks, and he plans to renew that plan. Why won't they spend just a few $100 billion to end homelessness and to feed the poor? Why won't they take that route? Why must the righteous suffer, seeing the suffering of the poor and the downtrodden? Why must the wicked insist on being wicked with all their hearts? Why can't they love the least of the brethren? The best day of my life is probably going to be the day that my flesh dies. It breaks my heart to see the romantic injustice. It breaks my heart to see the cruelty to people who are susceptible, people who are vulnerable. It's unbelievable what goes on this planet. The most cruel creature on this planet is human beings. It's not snakes, it's not sharks, it's human beings. Just the sheer cruelty. They know way better than to be cruel, but they chose to be cruel. They know way better than to turn their backs on God's commandments, but they turn their backs on God's commandments. It's just wrong. It is so wrong. People need to be more wise in that. They need to be more insightful. They need to study the characteristics of the perfected person, and they need to achieve those characteristics. They need to achieve a perfect purity. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Your righteousness must surpass the Pharisees to enter the kingdom of heaven. I wish people would just get together. I wish they would rally for a sound and cost-effective war on poverty. I wish that they would rally with all their hearts. We can easily outmaneuver the people who don't want cost-effective programs, who don't want cost-effective housing, tiny homes in cost-effective places. It's not enough to have wealth taxes. One must have cost-effective spending so the money is spent well. It must be efficient. It must be effective. We must give people the resources they need to climb out of their impoverished state. So as I look at this situation, as God's son, as the son of two doctors, yes, I'm inclined to help people. And yes, if people would rally and do the right thing, we could set up a moral committee. We could get the experts in various fields. We could accomplish this task. There's a way to do this. People need to stop being concerned about just themselves. They need to find the answer. They need to find the solution. They need to love each other. They need to help the least of the brethren. And as I look at this situation, I ask myself, what can I do? What can I do being who I am? You know, what did God expect me to do? I did everything that God expects me to do. The inhabitants of the earth, they didn't. They turned their backs on the poor. They turned their backs on their duty to God. They weren't faithful and true. And I have to call it how I see it. A king detests wrongdoing. A throne is established in righteousness. New Living Translation, justice. I know there's a lot of people with ulterior motives. They're jealous of each other. They hate each other. Rich people at each other's throats, at the throats of the poor. It's silly. It's petty. Why can't they see that righteousness is greater than wealth? Why can't they see that the only worthwhile life is a righteous life? Why can't they keep the greatest commandment? Why don't they love God with all their hearts? Why don't they love their neighbor as themselves? The one who loves God obeys God's commands. Why don't they obey God's commands? The inhabitants of the earth, they always screen out the righteous. They always screen out the righteous. They always kill the righteous. They always martyr the righteous. They don't care about doing the right thing. And you know, I just wanted to come out here and say this in this very spot. Last time I made a speech here, it was about Isaiah 30. And I wanted people to, hear something else other than my usual martial art arguments that I make, trying to get people to kind of take on a deeper faith, get people to rally to the real alpha point, get people to rally to the point of righteousness, where wisdom calls out. Wisdom calls out in Proverbs 8, at the highest point in the city. The path of life leads upwards, not into this world. This world is so cruel. It's so evil. All the rapes, all the robbery, all the murders, all the assaults. There are people starving to death all over the world, and the United Nations doesn't care. The IMF doesn't care. The churches don't care enough. The mosques, the synagogues, they don't care enough. Nobody cares but me. And the inhabitants of the earth, they found me guilty of caring, and so they're going to crucify me for the last time. And this time I won't be back. This time, like they say, when they say, in the movies and stuff, they say, goodbye, cruel world. That's me, I'm not coming back to this world. It's so cruel and evil. They're so selfish. They're so heartless. They're so insensitive. They're so callous. They just don't care.